No,
Haven't
the
we
whole
missed
thing
like
is
3 episodes
he has
in
to
a row?
walk backwards.
Or 2
Okay,
over the last
guys.
2 weeks?
All
It's
right,
not a choice. We
guys,
gotta get back
listen
on
up.
schedule.
Listen up. So I said at the top of episode 1 that we got to find a tagline to go along with the show, and I just want to see the ideas that you've got so far. Create your own reality and don't wait for happiness.
Oh,
That's a
I
good
like
one.
that.
Yeah, well, that's taken. You can't take it from something else. All right, how about this? Wenn hast du keine Freunde, hast du dein Selbst.
Das ist gut. Ich liebe das.
All right, see, that's better, but that's inaccessible to most Americans, right? So we got to think of something else. Okay, how about ne puche ne pierre?
Oh,
Okay,
I
if you
like
were
that.
listening, you would know that that falls into both categories of what I just said.
true.
Right? So, oh, I've got it. Okay,
Okay,
check it out.
alright,
This
he's
is
got
a
ideas.
lot- I think this is what you'll be looking for. Okay, great. Awesome. We've warmed up a little bit. Let's hear what you got. It's the single thing you seem to thinks things through, and once thinking's through, if that thing seems true, that thing's thoughtful thinking makes it true to you too. All right,
That's
cherry
good.
bomb
Got it.
fired
That's
up.
sick as
Nice.
hell, man.
What do you
Oh my
think?
god.
Maybe we don't need a tagline.
What?
Oh,
Oh,
that's what I get for
sad,
sharing
man.
my
Guys,
Guys, you're
creativity,
only
my
thinking in terms of the
creativity.
things that you would enjoy hearing. It has to be something that somebody else would read and be like, "Oh, I think I get it," or that connects to the material in some you see, fashion.
dude,
You always diss my creative efforts. You always think too much and do too little. The only way to realize any creative effort is to think by doing. Wait, what did you just say? What, you mean just now? Guys, I think we have our tagline. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Friend Simulator podcast. We are back in a little bit of a different format here. No guest today. Just wanted to see how things would work out, just trying to solo monologue. A little bit more structured. I got a couple of talking points that I want to talk about. Hopefully they'll spurn on a couple of stories. The first thing is an outright story that I wanted to share. It's another Truman Show moment, and I call it the Quack Story, which I'm still debating whether or not that really gives the game away, but I don't think it does. I think it's well built and it's good. Well built. I'm not gonna applaud myself too much. Anyway, the Quack Story is one of my favorite Truman Show moments that I've probably told the most. I know I've told it to everyone in my family at least once, most of my friends at least once or twice. I've told it a lot, so I think it's one of the stories that I have best memorized. So, for those of you who don't know, I took German. I learned the German language, all throughout middle and high school at Robinson. And it was one of the best classes, one of the best continuous classes that I ever took, because I was with a lot of the same people throughout the entire progression, so I was able to, get familiar. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, there were 3 teachers in the German department, so we got to, get very close to those teachers as we grew up. And in my senior year, I had Frau Massey, for those of you who know who that is. So that's only a select few. Great teacher, wonderful educator, just a lot of good energy in the classroom there. I definitely remember a lot of those classes fondly. But one of those classmates that I guess luckily for me I didn't interact with too long in my other classes, just because he wasn't my type of individual. And just in case, on the off chance that lots of people listen to this, I'll use a pseudonym. Let's call him Bryce. Yeah, Bryce. So Bryce was this I instinctively say kid only because he was one of those unfortunate guys that seemed to just have delayed hitting puberty in one way or another. He was still pretty short, wasn't very well built, didn't have very wide shoulders, a pretty high voice, a high kind of squeaky voice, which is what is partly central to this story that we'll get to in a second. And he just had that really unfortunate characteristic. He had very fair skin, so his cheeks were almost always rosy. So he just had that persona of, a little kid just off the playground. And it was unfortunate for him being, I believe he was a senior. Actually, no, I don't think he was in our grade level. I think he was a fairly advanced student. So he may have been a sophomore or a junior where we were seniors, but he looked a fair bit younger even than that. Which, I can have sympathy for that. And that's probably one of the reasons he sort of leaned into having a personality that matched the way that he looked. So Bryce, this guy, he had, like I said, an unfortunately kind of high-pitched and not quite squeaky, but I'll do my best to imitate it. And this really isn't to be, critical. It's just trying to get as close as possible. He had one of those unfortunate voices that always sort of sounded kind of like this. And just he was not an easy person to listen to. And he was the kind of student that would talk a lot when answering questions, I think just to kind of show how much knowledge he had, even if it wasn't really related to the lesson. So we had no shortage of audio samples for the way that he sounded. So a good friend of mine, Eric, I'll say his real name, Eric Becker, he was in that class with me as well. And there was, one day where we had been talking, we had been riffing throughout class because he was another kind of guy that just really likes, in free time, you just like to laugh. So we screwed around a lot. Not too much to interrupt the class. That was more Ed. Oh man, he's got his own stories in that class that are just hilarious. But Eric and I had been riffing about one thing or another. And then we kind of, Bryce had said something especially irritating for that moment in the class that just got a sigh out of a lot of classmates. And I don't remember who first instigated it. It was probably me. I'm more the, in my less friendly side, I can be a little bit critical of people. I've inherited that from a couple of people that I know. Excuse me. So I leaned over to Eric and I said, "Wonder if Bryce was evolved like a Pokemon in that, well, obviously he would be the first generation of whatever Pokemon that was." See, that's mean. See, even now I'm not being kind. I'm sorry, Bryce. But I said, "Wonder if he could only say one word when he communicated. What if all he could say was like quack, because he had a voice comparable to a duck, and he could only say quack, quack, quack in that voice." And we thought that would be kind of funny. We were being stupid, and just kind of jarring one another. It was like, I wonder if he could only talk like that. Boy, that would be funny. We would never have said anything like this to Bryce's face or to anyone's face like that, because that would just be rude. That would just be mean. But we were getting a laugh out of one another and spending the little bit of free time that we had just kind of jogging one another that way. Sorry about the pause. I want to make sure my computer stays charged here, but yeah, it'll survive. Anyway, so, we kind of finished up what we were talking about, finished the joke for the moment, and class got back underway because there's kind of a, individual or group work, and once that work was done, we were going into another section of the class. And Frau Massey stands up before the class, and she grabs, she's explaining a useful resource to us, the book of, I believe it's something like the Book of 500 Useful German Verbs. And she says, "All right, guys, if you really are serious about learning the language and you want to be, have a lot of practical knowledge, this is a great resource to have. It's not too big, can fit in a handbag." It's basically, it's like any language dictionary, but it's all verbs. There's no nouns or adjectives or anything. It's all focused on verbs and generally practical verbs. So she flips through this book. It's, even though I said it's, fairly portable, it's a pretty large book. It's like at least 400 or 500 pages, I would say, because, about 500 words, but then, multiple lines explaining the words and the translation. So that would fill a pretty large book. She flips to a random page and she says, "All right, here's a good example. Ducken, to duck." The verb to duck, to squat down, have something go over your head. Everyone knows what duck means generally. And I hear her say duck, and I think, oh, that's funny. And in the 2 to 3 seconds of silence that I was about to turn to Eric and say, "Hey, that's funny that she said duck, because weren't we just talking about..." And in that space of silence, nobody in the classroom said anything except for Bryce. And what Bryce chose to say was one singular word. He let out one perfectly pronounced quack. And Eric and I whip to look at one another and absolutely lose our minds for the next probably 10 minutes. Just going, did you hear what was he listening? And, everyone else in the class clearly thinks that we've lost our minds. And we're saying, what is wrong with you guys? And we're speechless. We are dying of laughter and shock. And we can't believe that we had someone else in the room to witness that happen. Even telling the story now, it's been so long that unless I corroborate it soon with Eric, I'll almost feel like it didn't happen. But it happened in my senior year of high school. I wasn't a little kid where I would easily have, mixed up the facts of a story. That was a well corroborated tale. And then we very quickly said that to everyone in class, because we didn't want to embarrass Bryce, and it wouldn't have made any sense anyway. He's like, "Oh, you guys, you really just wouldn't get it. Sorry to interrupt. Let's keep going." But That was one of the most, while the stakes are trivial, one of the most mind-blowing moments of synchronicity, to misuse that word, I've ever had in my life. Just of, like I said, it's another one of my Truman Show moments. But because I was like, you could not have, because think about the odds involved there. We came to the idea of him saying quack totally independently of anything happening in the room. Frau Massey flips to a random page in a very thick dictionary book, flips to the exact page that Duck sits on, Ducken, chooses the word Ducken. Bryce hears it and thinks in all of his wisdom, the best thing I can do right now is say quack. And he did. And he was sitting right in front of us. We heard it as clear as day. It was one of the greatest just moments of you had to be there or you just won't believe me. So that was a hilarious moment that I shared with my friend Eric. And another example of why, if you just pay attention to what's going on in life a little bit, you can have some pretty spectacular stories come out of virtually nothing. Just like talk to people a little bit, interact and just try to kind of bear witness to what's going on around you. I'll talk later about that. I had a really nice day yesterday because I've really filled up my schedule pretty spectacularly. Oh, there's that word again. I've filled up my schedule pretty much to the brim. I don't think I'm overworking myself yet. I need to get a handle on my sleep schedule like everybody does, but and that's mainly just because I stay up a little too late. I still get stuck into the infinite scroll on like social media and stuff, but also sometimes it's like reading a book or playing video games. So it's really just about getting myself to unplug or close the book and go to sleep. But I've been filling up my schedules pretty much to the brim with generally productive things. Like I'm working more at Tropical now because we have less people working, and even less now because somebody at the other store got COVID, and that's always anybody that was working with them has to quarantine, and this, that, and the other. They're all probably going to be fine. We're all young. We're all young people that, at least everyone that's affected. And I wasn't even there, so I'm not at risk. But, before that COVID diagnosis even happened, one of the managers at the store that I work at University Mall across from George Mason, one of the managers is out, for the month in Nepal. He's actually he's going to be back in just a few days, but he's in Nepal visiting family. Another shift leader, which I think is a position I may have mentioned in the second podcast. Just that it's a position in between a normal crew member and a manager. They have a little more charge. So shift lead is gone. So we're pretty understaffed. So I'm working a lot more at Tropical. But that's really not a bad thing because one, I'm making money. And two, the thing that I have kind of continually valued over my paychecks at Tropical Smoothie is just the fact that now that I'm there in a clearly public service related industry, I get to see so many more people just in my day. The biggest, probably lasting effect that I've gotten is I have new friends now. I've made friends with my coworkers because it's something you really take for granted in high school is, being in the same class as somebody for an entire year of school, you really get a lot of shared experience. So you have endless things to talk about. Just like Eric and I having that Quack Story that we share. It's because we were in that same class and we knew Bryce and we knew the classroom. So we have all those memories. And it's why, high school friends tend to be at least ideally, maybe not, let's not say ideally. Ideally, you make as many friends as you can wherever you go. And high school is one of those big opportunities. So it's very likely that a lot of your close friends will probably come from middle and high school. That's my conjecture anyway. But, working the same shifts with people at a job, it's, there's shared stress, you're working together, you're on a team, and you see these people often. So you're going to make friends with them if you put in a little bit of effort to make conversation. So one of the best things coming from Tropical is I have new friends now because, college is all online. And even with the classes I'm in, well, I don't want to be too critical of my classmates there, but I don't have too much in common with a lot of my classmates, even though I'm an English major now and we're all English majors. But it's been really nice to have a couple more people that I can have new conversations with or tell old stories to because they've never heard them. So I keep in practice telling stories like the Quack Story, which I actually, excuse me, I need a glass of water or something. I'll get that in a second. But yeah, it's just been really nice making all those friends. And then the second layer of social interaction is I almost feel like I'm slacking off when I'm working at the cash register because the whole job is just talking to people. And I I tested in the 99th percentile for extroversion when I took a real personality test, not a BuzzFeed quiz. It was a test developed by Jordan Peterson and a couple other psychologists. It's called the Big Five, Understanding Yourself, or the Big Five Personality Test. It costs like $12. It's not super expensive for something that I think is pretty interesting and insightful. If you like to me, I think it's more in depth than the Myers-Briggs personality test, with the 4-letter identifiers. I took that too, and that one's free. But the Big Five personality test gives you very detailed descriptions that I think are can at the very least be very novel, and at the most actually provide a lot of utility to know what kind of things you're good at, or maybe not say good at, but the kind of things that you have in your nature right now and the things that you might want to try and develop. I won't go any further into that than I just did, but it's a really interesting quiz. But I love talking to strangers. That's part of that super high factor in extroversion, and openness. I really like telling jokes to people that I've never met, because if I can get a laugh out of a stranger, they expect that's pretty much the coldest audience you can get, is somebody that has no reason to believe you're vaguely comical or intelligent. And if you can lay down a great joke, that breaks so many barriers right in the beginning. It's like, that's one of my icebreakers in classrooms are jokes. Making friends with my coworkers were jokes. So I kind of get like 50 to 100 little micro introductions a day working at the cash register. When I have a script in a way. I try to be very dynamic every time I communicate and try not to say the exact same things twice, but just for the sake of, structuring the way I interact with people and giving myself the same windows to be creative. I always, repeat their order back to them, which is just something everybody should do. But even if it was a short order, I say it back to them just so they can know I was paying attention. People like to know they're being paid attention to. I always, even if there's only one person in the store, I ask for their name to tie it to the ticket so that their name can be called rather than just their food item. Because I think people like to say their names and introduce themselves. And that's sort of like I don't want to say forced, but it's a required introduction that can be made or can not be made. So I guess it's not required, but it's an optional introduction that I can broach. So now this person has a name. And now, of course, me wanting to be both making jokes and have a micro introduction, if I can, I try to always make a not demeaning, but a joke or a reference off of their name, or just compliment their name if it's very interesting. Like there was a guy, an Abraham, who went by Abraham, and I said, "That's a strong name, man. Not too many people choose to go by the full name Abraham. It's usually something like Abe." And he was like, "Oh, thanks, man." I was like, "Yeah, it's a biblical name." And I give little nods like that, nothing too personal or too invasive. Like, "Hey, it's a biblical name," or "Oh, there was a what's the name of that artist that everybody likes? There was a Lana," and I said like Del Rey, and she was like, yeah, like Del Rey, and I was like, "You probably heard that one a lot, right?" And she was like, "Yeah, well, at least you spelled it right." And I was like, "Hey, whatever I can do." So that was that sort of interaction I love. And then another layer where I am a little bit creative is if the price range, the charge of whatever food they're buying, is reflective of a fairly recent year or a year that I know a little bit of history about. Like if I get, if the price comes out to be 1925, I'll be like, "Hey, it's in the middle of the roaring 20s," or like, that's 4 years before Great Depression starts. Or if it's 1935, it's like, yeah, it's 4 years before World War II starts, or just little bits like that. Excuse me. Sometimes if it's a weird year, I'll kind of have to stretch like that's 150 years before whatever, or I'll have to go for something really broad like 822. I can go for vaguely. I can say, "Oh, that's around the time the Vikings were settling Iceland," and it's like, because that's a pretty big year range, and just Vikings settling Iceland is a pretty broad thing to say, but it's still interesting, and it's an opportunity to say something that'll get someone's attention. Just yesterday, no, 2 days ago now, somebody came in with a Doctor Who t-shirt. He was an older man who I could tell probably, a little bit more on the I don't want to say nerd, well, a guy who probably watches a lot of TV, Comic-Con sort of individual, I'm not a cop, that sort of guy. He probably wouldn't be one to start too many conversations, but I was like, "Hey, I watched and loved Doctor Who," so I said, "Hey, I like your shirt, man." And he's like, "Ah, thanks." And I noted that it used the names of the first to the 11th Doctor to spell out regenerations. And I said, so it ended with Matt Smith, and I said, "Hey, so I see that ends with Matt Smith. Is that a conscious choice not to recognize the last two, or is this just an old shirt?" And he was like, "This is just an old shirt, but it was right before Peter Capaldi joined." And then we just got to talking about Doctor Who a little bit, and we talked all the way, because there weren't a bunch of customers in line, so I had a little bit of free time to do that. I talked with him all the way up until his smoothie came out, and rather than him just standing silently in a store waiting for a smoothie, he was able to talk about the show that he clearly enjoys because he's wearing the t-shirt. And it was just a nice conversation. He recommended something to me too that I now need to remember. It was because we were talking a little bit about David Tennant and a little bit about another Shakespearean actor. We were just talking about people that are classically trained and why David Tennant was such a standout performer as the Doctor and is such a great actor in general. You know, his role as Kilgrave in Jessica Jones, that first season of the Marvel Netflix show. That performance is what's really stand out to me about that show. But it's neither here nor there. Well, it's a little here and a little there. But we were talking about Shakespearean actors, and then he recommended some... staged. It was staged with David Tennant and someone else. And there is either them talking about Shakespearean work, or it's a production... Maybe it's a production of some show or a collection of scenes. Something like that. Anyway, I want to look into it because he recommended it. And I'm glad I remembered it, so now it's enshrined in this record. But that was just a really nice conversation, and I was able to, give that guy a much nicer, well, if he enjoyed the conversation at least, a much nicer day than just, hey, I went and got a nice smoothie. Now he's going to have a smoothie and have had a great social interaction. And, with COVID and everything, like I was saying, I'm not even in classes physically, so there's so few opportunities to do that. It's really made me appreciate how much of an opportunity strangers are, obviously within reason. You don't go talking to like a weird person on the street or somebody in the middle of a set working out at the gym. You don't say, hey man, how's it going? It's like, you leave them alone. And some people just don't want to interact very much, which ultimately I would hope that everybody strives to interact whenever possible, if they can do so constructively, but just people are very different. So because I'm so high in extroversion and I like to talk to people and I like to think I'm fairly good at speaking and tailoring a conversation to be interesting, I try to do it whenever I can because I always get a lot of joy out of it. It uplifts me. Like I said, I feel like I'm slacking off when I'm working only the register because to me, I would do that without getting paid. I do that just when I'm on the street sometimes, when I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I'll try to say a one-off comment to a biker even, just little things like that because I just enjoy doing it. So the fact that I get to do that as a job is pretty awesome. And it's another testament to why I'm clearly supposed to be something. Oh boy. Sorry about that. Oh boy, I just kicked the microphone. That probably just came through terribly. I'm going to have to edit that out a little bit. What are we at? 20? We're about 20 and a half minutes. And yeah, and like I said, this is just going to be a solo recording, so there's not going to be a second pass. But hopefully I'm still coming through clear. But yeah, I just try to have those sorts of interactions whenever I can because it's just really nice. It's really fun to do. And it's uplifting for me, and people seem to enjoy it too. Obviously, for anybody who knew me in high school and middle school, I struggle. Well, actually, I don't know if everyone would know this, but like I said, high in trait openness, so I'm fine with telling people anyway. I was terrible at talking to girls in any respect, like even just making friends. There's a few individuals, I won't call them out by name, that probably remember me spiking in awkwardness and not being able to hold a conversation. So much so that I had friends that were girls that were no longer friends of mine just because I couldn't talk to them because I liked them, and it was, a big old nuclear time. That's middle school for you. But yeah, I had a lot of trouble with that from a lot of different directions. I had, my older brother was always Jerry was super social all through high school. So I was like, oh man, I'll never, like, rather than being inspired by it, I was intimidated. I was like, oh, I'm never going to be like that, so I shouldn't even try. And I was always in my head too much, like, oh, if I say this one thing, it's going to ruin it, but it's far worse to stand there silent and awkward, so I should have said the thing anyway. Excuse me. But that's something that theater helped a lot with, just being able to talk to people, doing theater throughout middle and high school. And now I love talking to people, and specifically the opportunity of working at Tropical Smoothie, because it's a smoothie joint, a lot of young people come in. There's a lot of young ladies that come in, well, young as in my age, not well, I mean high school age people come in, but I'm not being a creep is what I'm trying to say. But I have fun just talking to all of them because it's, again, a little one-off opportunity. Here's a girl that doesn't know me that I have a chance to make laugh or say something vaguely interesting. I mean, I try not to be vague, but it's another little micro opportunity to get in practice of not only talking to strangers but talking to girls. Because now I think I'm far better at that than I obviously would have been, and everyone's hopefully better than they were in middle school at talking to members of the opposite sex. But I'm definitely a lot. I don't want to describe it as smooth, but I think I'm definitely a good conversationalist at that point, and I have a lot of fun, and it seems like other people do too. So that's just something that I see as super valuable in Tropical Smoothie. And like I was saying, I was talking about how overscheduled I am, or not overscheduled, how full my schedule is. I work a lot at Tropical Smoothie now because we're understaffed. I'm working. That's where I just got home from. Today is what's today? Wednesday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays I work at my father's office, the Grimes Insurance Agency. And I just help them with filing and doing the sort of grunt work. Like, it's not terribly difficult, but it's very time consuming, and there's only 3 people that work at the agency, and they all have high order work to do, like talking to clients, solving problems, and doing real business. So having me there to just do like filing and excuse me, labeling and stuff really saves them time and stress that can be better put towards growing and doing good business, growing the business and doing good business. So I'm letting my voice reach a low register. I want to make sure that I'm using a higher dynamic range of my. No, see, that gets weird. But using a higher dynamic range is important. Dynamic range isn't even the right term. Let's get back on the saddle here. So, yeah, I'm working at the agency 2 days out of the week. I'm working at Tropical Smoothie a lot. I've basically got 4 bosses. I've got my dad, my actual boss, Brian, who's awesome at Tropical Smoothie, super cool guy, and then each of my teachers, and that's somewhere I've been sliding back in a little bit. I'm a little behind in my classwork because it's really easy, as everybody in college right now knows, and high school. It's easy to let yourself just not do assignments. Like, I will get around to it, and sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. I do get around to it eventually, but I should really be getting around to it. Excuse me, far earlier than I am, but I'll get around to it. But anyway, yeah, I've got both my professors, I've got my father, and I've got my actual boss. So there's a lot of people, that, and that's just like the sort of work stuff I'm doing. I'm also helping as a cameraman, which is also work, as with Franco Aurelio at what is his at the real Franco Aurelio. He's gonna be mad that I didn't have the real plug. Yeah, I'm helping Franco film his newest music video, which is super fun because I haven't held a camera since high school, helping Jerry out with his film project. So that's just been a fun return to something a skill that I kind of forgot that I actually have. Is handling a camera with general intelligence and being able to frame a shot and stuff like that. I'm not Kubrick, but I mean, I can hold a camera steady and say if a shot is centered and focused most of the time. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun filming with Franco. I have more of a reason to be going to the gym now because I try to go to the gym 3 days a week. I've been doing 2 days a week for the most of the past few weeks, partially because I'm busy and partially just because I'm lacking a little in motivation because I go on my own. But that's what's changing. My buddy Ian, sorry, I thought there might have been background noise. My buddy Ian asked me to kind of help him start getting back to the gym again, just because he hasn't been in a little while because he's been busy with other stuff. He's the pilot. So I'm kind of guiding him back through, just because, you always want to have a partner when you're starting out at the gym again, just to make sure, one, that you don't hurt yourself, and to, just kind of stay with motivation and keep you, keep you accountable to yourself. It's like, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to go, and these are the people I'm going with. So that's been a lot of fun, going with him. We've only gone once. We went last Monday, and we meant to go yesterday, but I was super busy yesterday, so I didn't. But we're going to go later today. So that's going to be cool. And what else am I doing? I'm part of that Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I think I've mentioned, but I went there for the first time in almost a month, this past weekend, because I'm just so busy. And it's we do sessions of like 4 or 5 hours. Oh, excuse me. But, oh my gosh. See, that's that sleep that I didn't get. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons, still a lot of fun every time I go. I always have to, like, I don't know if I have the time, and then I go, and it's like, that was awesome, that was fun. I tend to play a lot with the DM. My friend Nicholas, he's one of the closest friends that I've made at Mason now, because I really didn't make too many, because just not a super student culture at Mason is kind of not, so it's hard to really find people that you really want to kick around with. But I'm really glad that I made friends with him, because he's also now joined. I don't know if I've talked about Valheim. It's a great open world game that I'm playing at night. Another thing keeping me up too late, that I play with my brother Jerry, Zeke, who I think I've mentioned before, Jerry's friend from VCU, Robert, and now Nicholas is our 5th man. And that's just been super fun. It's one of those. It's sort of like Minecraft. I say it's between Minecraft and Rust for the people who know who those games are. It's not as punishing as Rust, but more hard work than Minecraft is. And it's really rewarding. It's just a really fun game. There's like whole rules about structural integrity and things like that. It's very cool. It's a really fun game. But Nicholas has joined in on that. So since I'm not able to go to Dungeons and Dragons too much, it's cool that I'm glad that he and I are able to interact more during those games because we tend to get on at about the same time. So that's awesome. Why was I talking about Dungeons and Dragons? Oh, just talking about how full my schedule is. Yeah. So something that was really nice is that yesterday, because I just got the battery low notification. Yesterday, you know what? I'll try and actually wrap this up here. I wanted to go a lot longer, but just time constraints. I want to make sure I'm able to save this document. Yesterday, I was able to really stop and kind of smell the roses in a way, literally. Well, there are no roses around, but there were some nice daffodils. I took yesterday to do some reading after working with my dad. I drove to the park near my house, did some reading for an English class, and then just walked around town. And I purposely left my phone at home, and it was so nice. I did some people watching. I went to Kava, got a bowl there because I have a nice gift card to Kava given to me from Becky, and I just went and got Kava. It was delicious. There were so many families out with their kids that were just adorable to watch. And it was just a really nice day, and it was just kind of reminded me the same way I really try not to take for granted getting to meet new people. Like everyone's living, little stories in life, and getting to watch them just for a minute, sitting outside silently eating a little grain bowl, was really something. It was just a really nice day, and I just kind of wanted to mention that, especially with these days. It's raining outside right now, but on nice days, obviously we have to wear the mask and you got to social distance and everything, but well, we have to because the rules. But if you can take a moment to, and again, I'm going to be an old person and say, get off your phones and live life. Get off your phone and just look around a little bit and just watch some people. Don't be creepy about it, but watch some people and just watch how many things a person does, even when they don't know they're being watched. Because it's more than you think. You can really watch kind of a little story play out, even if it's just like somebody in line at in a food station, like I try to do. I try to make those little stories, or eating food with their families, or just spending time with their kids. It's really cute in terms of the kids, and just really fascinating to watch how much can happen. So I think I'll cut it off here. That was a fast 30 minutes. I hope this slightly different format is interesting. I got to pretty much all my little structured bullet points there. Yeah, thank you for listening, everybody. And obviously this was after a bit of a hiatus because of how busy I've been, but glad I was able to record this, and I hope people find this interesting. So thanks for listening.